Overbets have become a lot more common in poker these days, and when a good player does it, it's getting harder and harder to discern exactly what it means. There were periods of time when it was like, well, it's always value, and then there was periods of time where, well, it's always bluffs. And now sometimes overbets happen when it doesn't make sense to do an overbet kind of as either, and then you just kind of have to make distribution-based decisions. And that's the spot we're going to find one player in this major spot in an EPT.
Yeah, when we say player, we got two kind of big deal players here. You may not have heard of either one of them. It's, I don't know anyone's first name.
Sergei Rychek.
Thank God, Sergei Rychek.
Robert Hydorn.
And Robert Hydorn. Hydorn finished 10th in this year's main event.
World Series of Poker main event, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Rychek plays a bunch of big high rollers, has millions. Both these guys have millions in earnings. These are kind of big deals, even if we've never heard of them. Sort of the smaller, like we don't play high roller community hasn't heard of these guys. These guys are really good and have a lot of experience.
Right, and they play interesting poker, and we'll see that on this board, which is why Alex Trembath suggested it, I believe. He suggested it on Twitter. Of course, include a YouTube link and a timestamp when you suggest, or else we're not going to do it. It's too bad for you.
Yeah. By the way, all aboard the Nitro train.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Choo-choo.
Choo-choo indeed.
Choo-choo.
We're talking about poker, we're talking about sports betting, and we are talking about casino games. Hey, at the end of every month, there's the Poker Guys. You only get in if you click the link tournament. That's what we're calling it now, I think.
Yeah, I think we're calling it that. The link, of course, that we tweet out when we tweet about our hands that we have done for the breakdown. Use that link, get in the tournament. It's a great tournament, Jonathan.
It's a great tournament. There's 1,000 buy-ins guaranteed. We get like 120 players, sometimes a little bit more. There's a massive overlay. It's fun, it's fast, and it's an incredible value. Why wouldn't you take all the free money that our sponsor just keeps putting out there?
They just give it to you.
Just grab it. It's right in front of you.
It's like a shot of adrenaline.
Just take it.
All right, let's get to the hand.
Okay.
Play this to its conclusion. It's Robert Hydorn and Sergei Rychek. So it was an under-the-gun raise to 35,000 with the King-Jack of Hearts called by Hydorn in the big blind with 4-3. Top pair against an open-ended straight draw and a backdoor flush draw. And a continuation bet of 30,000 into 94,000.
Probably just a call, would you say? I mean, some people might try to check raise, but you like that equity. You like to try to hit it.
130.
Well, okay, I should have stopped when I was good.
That was a classic. Why couldn't the break have hit?
Yeah.
Just 2 minutes earlier. Yeah, the check raised to 130,000.
Of course, if the 2 of hearts comes to something now, it's going to be very difficult to come and get away from.
So Rychek now with second pair. Hydorn still with the straight draw. Would have been happier if that was the Queen of Diamonds. Hydorn checks. Check, check, and Hydorn catches a small piece on the river. Oh, wow. Hydorn bluffs the river and bluffs big. It's all into call for Rychek.
It's kind of a strange, I mean, from Rychek's point of view, it's kind of a strange line because if Haidon had a set or something similar, he wouldn't have checked the turn because there's so many draws out there. So I'm sure that he feels like there's something that doesn't make sense here, but I have stopped making predictions.
Can he find a call?
I mean, it could be that Haidon tries to rep 7-8 of some form, right? Maybe just 7-8 that wasn't a flush draw or something, because if he had 7-8 of clubs, he would probably just shove the turn instead. It feels like that's one of the few hands that could have played it this way.
He folds the best hand, the bluff gets through.
All right, so that's a really big shove, and it happened to work this time. We're going to talk about if it should. We're going to talk about if Rychek should have responded differently, but let's go back in time to the flop and talk about that first for a second and see what should Haidorn do on the flop, because this is a pretty interesting decision point, especially late in a tournament. What should you do with 4 high and an open ender when the under the gun guy is continuing here?
I mean, a lot of the times you should probably just call. There are a lot of boards where that would be the case. This is probably not one of them, though. Having 4 high ain't great.
I don't like 4 high as a showdown hand.
We're out of position, so it's going to be hard to get value. Even when we get there, it's going to be harder to bluff as well. I like a raise because, A, this board is just better for us than it is ultimately for Rychek. We have all the 2 pairs, comparatively at least. We have the jack 5 suiteds of the world.
I mean, we might have literally the only 2 pairs of the 2 players in the hand. I'm not sure Rychek is opening 5-6 suited, and if he's not opening 5-6 suited, then he has no 2 pairs because he's under the gun. As Haidorn, we have 5-6 off. As Haidorn, we have jack 5 suited and jack 6 suited. So that makes it a pretty strong range advantage. We can even have jack some of the time when under the gun opens, right?
Can.
Which of course Rychek can have as well, but we have more of those types of hands and 4 high. Seems like a good combo and a reason to raise.
Absolutely. It's a nice balance of hands that have no showdown value but some equity, and hands that have strong equity and strong showdown value.
Right. So as Rychek, of course, we don't love getting raised on this board, but it's kind of better to have king jack than it is to have aces here, because we block jack 5 and jack 6 suited and jack if Haidorn's going to show up with that. So that's nice, right? That's a reason to call.
Absolutely. And this isn't one of those tournaments and one of these players where, Haidorn isn't the kind of guy who, if he check raises you just have to fold top pair automatically, right?
I mean, no.
He's way too good. He finished 10th in the main event this year. I mean, he's legit. Both these guys are legit, really. You can't just go around bet folding top pair except against the most exploitative type of opponent or situations and opponents, right?
Right, and of course it's also a pretty draw-heavy board, so that's another reason why you can't just fold top pair here. And it's a board that a good opponent is probably going to rep those 2 pairs. So everything makes sense in the flop. We get to the turn, and the Queen of Hearts is not the best card for Haidorn to continue on. Now, I think, personally, that Haidorn is probably continuing on a lot of cards. Probably any club, anytime he improves to a straight is obviously a time that he's going to want to continue.
Sure.
But he might be repping any open-ender or any even gut shot and any club. But this just happens to be one of the worst cards in the deck, where Rychek could have made top 2, he could have made top set. It's not one of the cards that you can easily rep a draw with. But what Haidorn gives up by checking here is the ability to rep 2 pair in a set as reputably as he could have before.
Right. Of course, he's sometimes going to be checking strong made hands, sets, etc. But mostly he's going to continue those because the board is wet, and absolutely Rychek can have clubs here. Very reasonably can have like the ace-10 of clubs or something like that.
And the stack-to-pot ratio kind of demands that we try to get it in with hands like 5-6 and jack 5 at this point, right?
You're not supposed to be too afraid of queen jack. You
And,
have to, like, suck it up.
It's kind of a so-be-it spot, right, in those times. So we think that mostly Haidorn gives up his ability to rep the 2 pair and set type hands, although maybe he can have a little bit of it on the turn. But that's a big thing that he loses by checking here, and I think he's probably just check giving up at this point. If he's checking here with the stack to pot as it is, if Rychek decides to bet whatever he has, which he doesn't, luckily for Haidorn, I think Haidorn's just giving up, right?
I think so. I mean, I really like, by the way, this give up by Haidorn ultimately. Like, you just got your raise called.
Big raise, by the way.
It's not a good sign. You're pretty much committing yourself on the turn, and it doesn't look like Rychek is going anywhere. I think it's a great time to give up when you don't have any kind of story you can tell besides, I really have 2 pair, darn it, please fold what was usually top pair here, you know? So or better. So it just seems like a good time to check.
It does. And right check checking back, it makes some sense as well. You would think, okay, I don't want to just kind of game theory disaster myself here. Maybe you can charge some draws, but you'd expect Hydorn with the stack to pot ratio as it is to continue betting with club draws and other draws as well on the turn a lot. It kind of looks exactly like a give up. Like maybe, I guess he didn't continue betting his draw, so I guess right check could have protected against that, but he decided he has enough showdown value, and Hydorn, I guess, has a rep as enough of a bluffy guy that maybe he can make another decision on the river, which he doesn't. Might be because the bet is so big. What do you think about the size of this bet?
Oh, man. I don't know. It seems really strange to me to bet so big when you just... If you really got there, right? Like after it goes check, check.
I think he's repping that he really got there with that big bet. I think he's saying I have 7-8 or 3-7 suited or deuce 3 suited if he can show up with those latter 2 hands. I think he can show up with all 16 combos of 7-8 probably.
I mean, I agree.
But I don't think he necessarily has 3-7 and deuce 3 suited. It's possible. We don't really know enough about the guy to know.
It's just now you're starting to worry like, I would be worried anyway if I actually had the nuts here on the river, right? As Hydorn, that right check has a hand like ace jack or king jack or something like that when he checks back the turn. Sure, he's going to check back over pairs sometimes too, but he might bet over pairs sometimes as well to protect against the draws and things like that sometimes, right? So I just really worry about folding out all these hands that we're trying to get value from. I guess it's possible you may just decide as Hydorn, I'm going to polarize myself, I'm going to have bluffs here, I'm going to have the nuts here, and I'm just going to go big either way, and it's fine.
I imagine Hydorn is a good enough player that he probably does bet the nuts this way sometimes if he's going to bet what turn into bottom pair this way, which is clearly a bluff, right?
Yeah,
so he's probably going to be balanced in that way. So then, sure, the story's a little weird, but the story's a little weird for almost any type of hand, right? It's kind of weird for a made hand because he didn't bet the turn. It's kind of weird for any draw because he's betting so big on the river if he got there. So as right check, you have to kind of put that all in the hopper and I guess make a distribution-based decision, right?
I think so. That seems reasonable.
And a good thing about right check's hand is that he doesn't block clubs. That's a good thing for his distribution. He doesn't want to block clubs in order to make this call.
Yeah.
However, it's not actually that good of a hand as far as hand quality distribution rise, right? I mean, he has sets here sometimes. He has aces, he has kings, he has ace jack. He might have some ace queen suited type hands. Probably not actually after the flop, but he has better hands than this for sure, right?
I mean, without question, I mean, he has lots of better hands. No doubt about it. I mean, he could have turned to queen with like ace queen of clubs specifically. He can have better jacks. He can have over pairs. The fact that it doesn't have a club is really key and does bump this up in the distribution, but you're right. He still has better hands, no doubt about it. He might even have the nuts once in a while.
Right, and it is his tournament on the line, and he might be thinking, okay, there's 58 players left in this event. I'm better than almost all of them. He plays super high rollers and stuff. Why would I take this very marginal spot, even if somehow I can math my way to this distribution being the correct part of my distribution to make the call? You know, I said that perfectly. Even if it's just like a marginally plus chip EV call, maybe I shouldn't do it because there's better spots I can find in this tournament.
And that is one of the big things that I think a lot of like great players find themselves up against, that type of tension of decision in big tournaments where sometimes you're up against, the field is wide and varied, and sometimes you're up against really good players who put you in marginal close spots where, yeah, you can call and hurt them, but you can really hurt yourself too. It's just like casualties of war. Or you can play against guys who play way more face up and way more straightforward, and it's much easier, and you can get so many chips from them without having to feel like you're risking that much. And sometimes, you know, discretion is just the better part of valor.
Well said. Well said. Discretion is the better part of valor. I guess ultimately Rychek believed that Hydorn is balanced enough, even though the story is kind of weird, that he's a balanced enough player that it doesn't have to be just bluffs, right? Because if he's unbalanced, it looks like kind of just bluffs.
Yeah.
And he's not quite high enough in his distribution. I get the fold. I think it's a bit spewy by Hydorn, but it worked out. Good for him.
I would have folded for sure. Hydorn does get it through. Do you like these decisions by Hydorn along the way is really the question we have for you guys, both on the flop where he decides to check raise, which we thought was cool and we liked. But what do you guys think about that? And then, of course, not just that he bluffed the river, but he bluffed so big on the river. Do you think that's a good idea also? Do you think there's better ways to either go for it or even not go for it? Do you think this is ultimately a profitable move by Hydorn? Similarly, the Rychek deciding to check back the turn. We think the flop play is pretty automatic there. And then deciding to fold the river. Would you have taken different paths? Let us know in the comments and let us know why.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You should do that. Another good idea is to use the link in the description to take you to our website where you can purchase our book. It's called How Can He Fold? Incredible Poker Decisions Broken Down Hand
Close enough.
I did it like you usually do it. I messed it up. That's
It's
too
a
bad.
complicated title.
Incredible Poker Hands broken down decision by decision, of course. On the website, you can get the ebook, which is a fun way to read the book, of course. But if you like to hold the book, make little notes in the book, which you might want to do because the hands get pretty complex by the end that we break down in this thing. You get the Amazon link there. Go to Amazon, buy it there, get the paperback.
Yep. If you're wondering, what is this book anyway? Well, I'm about to tell you. It's Grant and I breaking down 37 different big-time tournament hands, huge stakes, often things like the World Series and main event final table, things like that. Great players playing against each other in huge spots, basically, almost always. And the hands get more and more complex as the book goes on, and it's all bite-sized fun chapters, or fun size, as we like to call it back in Connecticut. Sure. Usually like between 3 and 5 pages.
Yep, and basically you'll learn, you'll have fun, you'll enjoy. Go get the book.
It's a great book.